280 trillion. Let's just start right there, because that number is almost impossible to wrap your head around, right? But right now, today, modern supercomputers are actually capable of crunching through an awe-inspiring 280 trillion calculations every single second. Just let that scale sink in for a moment. We aren't just using computers to type up office memos anymore. We're dealing with an absolutely massive scale of modern business technology. And how businesses actually harness that immense power? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Welcome to this explainer on technology in business. I actually like to think of this topic not as just a bunch of abstract IT infrastructure, tangled cables, and lines of code, but as a very tangible pipeline. Picture a massive, highly efficient data refinery. Just like a traditional oil refinery takes raw crude oil and processes it into valuable fuel, modern businesses take raw, chaotic data and run it through a massive technological pipeline, refining it into strategic, actionable gold. So here is our roadmap for the journey today. First, we'll look at the information-driven business. Then, connecting the global workplace. Third, software on demand. Fourth, management information systems. And finally, turning data into decisions. Okay, let's jump right into section 1, the information-driven business, the raw materials. It's crazy to think about, but in less than 70 years, businesses have completely transitioned from an industrial society to a knowledge-based economy. In this new world we live in, data is the fundamental raw material. Without information about orders, inventory, customers, or employees, a modern business literally cannot operate. We extract and handle all this raw material using a huge array of computing tools. On one end of the spectrum, you've got your dominant tools for daily processing, tablets and PCs. Because of the cloud, these super portable devices have the horsepower to run major business processes. On the extreme other end, we have those supercomputers we talked about earlier, handling massive big data tasks, national security research, and crazy complex weather simulations. And bridging the gap between it all is the software, groupware for team collaboration, and database programs for organization. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding how we actually organize all of those raw materials. That's where a database management system, or DBMS, comes into play. Think of it as your ultimate electronic filing cabinet. Businesses generate a mountain of raw, completely unorganized facts every single day. A DBMS is the software that allows managers to quickly enter, organize, and pull that data so it actually makes some kind of sense. It takes a chaotic pile of receipts and customer interactions and magically turns it into a highly organized, searchable library. All right, moving on to section 2, connecting the global workplace, the pipeline. So once we have all this raw data collected and neatly organized in our databases, we need a way to transport it efficiently across the entire organization. Basically, we need a pipeline. Computer networks are the physical reality of this pipeline. A network is really just a group of 2 or more computer systems linked together. They link users up so they can share data, audio, and video completely seamlessly. It's what means an employee sitting in Tokyo and an employee in London can screen share files and collaborate as if they were sitting side by side in the very same server room. Now, for the internal pipeline of a standard office, we use a LAN, or local area network. This is a network that lets people at a single physical site exchange data. And why does this matter so much? Because it is incredibly cost-effective. Instead of every single employee needing their own expensive, specialized software or a dedicated printer at their desk, a LAN streamlines office automation by letting everyone in the building securely share those central resources. It's a huge money saver. But let's be real. What happens when your employees aren't in the same building? That's where a virtual private network, or VPN, comes in. It connects a client through a local internet service provider straight into the massive public internet cloud. But instead of your sensitive data just floating out in the open, the VPN creates this encrypted, highly secure tunnel right through that chaotic public network, connecting directly to the internal LAN on the other side. This lets companies connect remote workers securely without having to foot the bill for incredibly expensive, dedicated private network lines. Which brings us to section 3, software on demand, renting the refinery. Okay, so our pipeline is built. Now let's talk about the machinery actually running the refinery. Traditionally, building a world-class IT infrastructure was something only massive Fortune 500 corporations could afford to do. But modern technology has introduced application service providers, or ASPs. And let me tell you, this completely changes the game. An ASP acts as a central hub. Instead of a business trying to frantically juggle software vendors, hardware vendors, and developers all on their own, the ASP just sits right in the middle. They manage all the heavy lifting, and the IT department and users simply access what they need when they need it. It is exactly like renting a fully staffed, fully equipped processing plant instead of trying to build a brand new one from scratch in your own backyard. This shift from traditional software to cloud software is an absolute revolution. The old way, traditional software, was painfully expensive. You had to buy it, install it locally on your physical machines, and then hire a massive internal IT staff just to maintain and upgrade the things. But the modern ASP and cloud software model, you just rent it monthly, it's hosted remotely, and it is highly scalable, meaning it grows right alongside your business. A company can save an absolute fortune in upfront licensing, infrastructure time, and IT staffing. All right, section 4. Management Information Systems, the processing plant. So, we have the raw materials, we've built the pipelines, and we've got our rented facilities. Now we are stepping into the true heart of the operation, where the company's information needs are actively managed, processed, and refined for actual decision-making. At this core, a company's integrated information system has a beautifully intricate complexity to it. It connects absolutely everyone, from operational managers on the front lines to middle management, all the way up to the top executives. None of these systems operate in a vacuum, guys. They all feed directly into one another. If we break it down step by step, we can really see how this assembly line moves data along. Step 1. The transaction processing system, or TPS, handles the daily, routine, tedious data, stuff like customer orders or factory floor barcode scans. Step 2, that raw data flows directly into a massive, centralized internal database, which essentially acts as the company's core brain. Finally, Step 3, management support systems jump in and extract that data to perform high-level analysis. We literally track the movement from basic, daily factory transactions all the way up to high-level executive forecasting. And just to show you how high the stakes really are in data processing, let me share a thrilling entrepreneurial story from our source material. About 20 years ago, the founders of a company called Captiva Software made a massive bet. They bet that despite the huge rise of computers, paper documents weren't going away anytime soon, and companies would desperately need software to scan and organize that paper data automatically. People honestly thought they were crazy. A board member famously told the founder, 5 years from now, people are going to either think you're a genius or a complete idiot. Well, spoiler alert, it turns out he was a genius. Their software eventually processed over 85 million pieces of paper daily, and the company was acquired for a massive $275 million in cash. Getting your data processing right is incredibly lucrative. And that takes us to our final section, Section 5, turning data into decisions, the finished product. This is the final stage of our data journey, where all this refined information, the databases, the networks, the processing power, actually translates into a competitive business strategy. To anchor these concepts in the real world, let's look at Union Pacific. This $19 billion railroad giant had a serious problem. They had these isolated stovepipe systems, basically separate databases that just refused to talk to each other. They couldn't get a complete picture of their own railroad. By building a massive unified data warehouse, they finally consolidated their systems. Suddenly, boom, they had a unified supply chain view. They could identify better traffic routes, optimize their locomotives, and manage their fuel and crews so much more efficiently. The end result? This massive IT investment completely paid for itself in just 3 years. That is wild. Now, you might be wondering, how do managers actually use that data day to day? Well, they use Decision Support Systems, or DSS. A DSS provides these awesome interactive computer models that allow managers to test specific what-if business scenarios. I challenge you to think like a CIO for a second here. Imagine you're a manager and you need to know exactly what happens if you increase worker shifts by 10%. Instead of just guessing and hoping for the best, you use a DSS. You punch in the variables, and the system predicts the overtime costs or the shifts in demographic sales trends. It literally acts as a digital crystal ball for the business. And believe it or not, we are pushing the boundaries even further today with expert systems. We're talking about artificial intelligence that actually reasons, learns, and provides human-like consulting advice to solve incredibly complex problems. We aren't just talking about basic calculators here, guys. Top-tier expert systems are out there right now, scheduling mind-bendingly complex airline crew rotations, optimizing deep-sea oil exploration, and even helping physicians diagnose rare illnesses. They act as virtual consultants right there in the boardroom, giving advice that is eerily similar to what you'd pay a top-tier human expert for. And I think that brilliantly illustrates the immense power of modern IT when it's truly done right. But, it also leads us to a final, pretty provocative question from our source material. Is your company actually getting a payoff from its IT investments, or are you just buying shiny new technology for technology's sake? It's a question senior executives honestly struggle with constantly. Because at the end of the day, having the fastest supercomputer or the sleekest network means absolutely nothing if your data refinery isn't producing real, strategic value that actually helps the bottom line. So take a hard look at your own organization's pipeline and ask yourself, is your raw data actually turning into decisions? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this helped you visualize the incredible, fast-paced world of business technology.